Hi everyone. So this week we are on chapter 2 and we're talking about sort of experiencing theater as the audience and as an actor and as space and how those things work together, how each experience is different. So first let's talk about the audience experience. So when we talk about the audience experience, it's important to think about empathy and aesthetic distance. So empathy is the emotional identification, right? So empathy is when you can feel what other people are feeling. So empathy is why you connect to characters, right? When you watch your favorite TV show and you're like, oh, I love her, I am her, I'm obsessed with her or him. And that's why you sort of connect to those characters. And that's why we watch. And that's why we feel things, right? So empathy is being able to have that emotional experience and connection with characters. Aesthetic distance, on the other hand, is a sense of detachment. So that is the reason that we know that we're watching a play or seeing a show or a movie, right? So you need both of them in order to really experience theater. Aesthetic distance is the reason that we don't, stand up and scream when someone's about to get murdered in a horror film, or I hope we don't, right? That's why little kids will do that sometimes, but we as adults can have aesthetic distance and understand that what we're watching isn't actually real. So both of those things function together to give us an experience as an audience of the theater. So a lot of people have different reasons for watching theater. Artists have different reasons for creating theater. So we can look at a few different reasons that we might have theater or the effects of it. One is catharsis, which is an emotional release. Aristotle thought that that was the purpose of theater. That was the function of theater, was so that we could get out those emotions. So we can feel sadness or we can feel fear or we can feel anger and sort of get those emotions out of our system, if you will. So an emotional release is catharsis. Bertolt Brecht, another person who talks about theater, he thinks that the purpose of theater, the function of theater, is for intellectual engagement and social action. So oftentimes his move would be to not actually let us have that catharsis, right? He would get us to that point of it's almost about to happen, or about to cry, or about to feel those feelings, and he would stop things so people couldn't have that emotional release, because the purpose of it for him was intellectual engagement and social action. He wanted us to go do something about it. See, if we get to feel those feelings and cleanse ourselves and feel better, then we're done. But if we get to almost feel those feelings and we get to get angry and we get to think about things without releasing those emotions, then maybe we'll go out and do something about things in the world. And finally, another idea of why is theater important and what function should it serve is contemplation, or just kind of getting to analyze ideas or think about things, right? So that's another function of the theater. So we talk about theater as, for an actor, the role of acting, of the nature of acting. It's human role playing, right? That's what acting is. It comes from the Greek words hypocrites, right? Hypocrites. You've heard that word. That's typically a negative connotation, but when we come to acting, it's pretending to be something you're not, right? So that is what it is. And mimesis, which is sort of a step of observation plus analysis, right? That's the artist's process of imitation. Mimesis means mimicking. Um, Observation plus analysis gives us the persona, or the literal or figurative mask that an actor might wear. So it's important to think about how that process is important to drama. As acting, you have to observe human nature and you have to analyze how people act so that you can then take on those roles. So there are lots of different people involved in a production and that the textbook mentions, and you'll read about all of those. But the last little short thing I want to talk about today in this video is the use of space, okay? Because the use of space is actually really important to a production, to a show. So I want to talk about those now. So let's talk about space. So as you can see here, space is a theatrical space must accommodate actors and the audience, right? That's really important, of course, for a theater experience. So we can talk about different types of traditional theater spaces. One is the proscenium, another is arena, and another is thrust. So the proscenium space is this kind of very traditional space here where you have, there's the curtain line, there's the stage in the back, and then the audience is out in the front. So you can see they have a lot of different, you have this wings, left and right, right and left. Wings, an arch, a curtain line, a drape. An apron is this thing that comes out right here. It's above the orchestra level, and some will have an orchestra pit. If it's a musical that uses an orchestra, there may be an orchestra down there playing for the production. And then the audience is out here, okay? And that's what we call the house. So that's a proscenium space. So that is pretty traditional audience out front, and then there's one area there to look at. Again, that's another angle that you can kind of look at and see sort of how that looks. Again, you have balconies, the house, orchestra pit, apron, stage, proscenium arch. That's acting area at one end with all spectators facing it, right? So when you put on a stage in a proscenium, it's very easy to just create that front, and then you know everyone's going to be facing you, and that's, you don't really have to worry too much about the sides because everyone's looking directly at. A thrust space is one of the oldest arrangements to be formalized as theater architecture. So a thrust space is going to have the audience on three sides, right? So there's a stage kind of coming out, and then audience on either side of the stage and in front. So it's important to remember, in a thrust space, you can't ever have your back to the audience, so you have to think about, when you are creating the play and the props and the setting and also blocking, you have to know where your audience is so that you make sure not to cut anyone off. So 2 to 3 sides, you're surrounded by audience on the thrust stage. And then finally you have arena. It's the easiest to kind of explain where everything is, but it's the hardest to work with because you have audience on all sides of you. You're just in the middle there, and the audience is surrounding you all around. So that one's also it's usually very limited on the setting, the props, the things that you will have like furniture-wise on stage, because you will block somebody. So it's a lot more bare bones in that aspect. So a black box is a small, intimate space, and it's flexible seating. So if you have a black box theater, it could be kind of anything. You really can arrange it in any way that you want. There's no set seating or spaces. It's a lot more flexible for a black box. So there's some possible seating configurations. You could have audience on 2 sides, kind of either way. So it's a lot more flexible, where you have the relationship between acting and audience as variables in that situation. Okay, so I'm still figuring this out a little bit, guys. I'm working on it. Anyway, that is a little bit I wanted to talk to you about today, about the experiencing theater as an audience, as an actor, what that is like, and also how space shapes the theater experience. So I hope that you read about all these things, more details in Chapter 2, and definitely let me know if you have any questions.